I'm Jana.
And I'm Carol.
And this is the Real Talk Recreation Therapy Podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about real experiences and real research that back up the use of recreation therapy as a method of treatment for a variety of populations.
We try to keep it real as we address concerns and successes that we and other recreation therapists have had as we all navigate this awesome career field.
We don't have it all figured out, but one thing we know for sure is everything gets a lot easier when you can talk it out with a friend. Welcome back to the Real Talk Recreation Therapy Podcast. Today we have a special interview. We are going to talk to Nathan Lamaster of Smart CEUs Hub. And what we're really excited to talk to him about is his experience in creating businesses about and related to therapeutic recreation. He's going to share some of his experience with us. And Jana and I are really excited to talk about this topic because we have a lot of conversations between each other about how would we ever go about having our own recreation therapy business? How could we do rec therapy private practice? Are there any other options for us as rec therapists if we don't want to work for someone else or we want to work maybe in a more non-traditional setting? We're really excited to have Nathan here to share some of his expertise. Nathan Lamaster is a nationally certified therapeutic recreation specialist, or CTRS, from Tyler, Texas, who has started a handful of both TR and non-TR businesses throughout his career. His current TR businesses are Smart CEU Hubs, the largest online NCTRC pre-approved source for recreation therapy continuing education, CEU Cloud, which is a mobile phone application for managing your continuing education transcripts and CEUs, and the Rec Therapy Directory, an ultimate resource site for recreational therapists. He also has a passion for seeing TR entrepreneurship grow and is both the author of the book, The Entrepreneur Rec Therapist, The Business Education You Missed in School, as well as the creator and the moderator for the TR Entrepreneur Connection Facebook group, which connects TR entrepreneurs and educates them. During his career as a practitioner in recreational therapy, he has held jobs in both clinical and community recreational therapy settings. He has worked in skilled nursing and behavioral health and did his internship in parks and recreation and physical rehabilitation. Nathan is also involved in volunteering at KVNE, which is the local Christian radio station that his wife works for. He lives with his wife, Nicole, his daughter, Isabella May, and his two dogs, Alice and Anna. So thank you, Nathan, for being with us here today.
Thank you for that intro, guys.
Yeah, we're so excited.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we read the whole bio about all your different experiences, but we were wondering if you can just tell us in your own words a little bit about your background in recreation therapy and then how you got into this whole rec therapy entrepreneurship realm.
Some things are born out of necessity is what I would want to start out with. So that's actually what got me into it. But to give you the backstory, so I'm from California, went to Sac State, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I changed my major a bunch of times, including EMT, business, psychology, and then running out of general education options. I was like, what do I do? And my mom actually found recreational therapy. And she says, that sounds just like you, Nathan. You like to help people and you love being active. And so I thought I'd try it out. I tried my first class, realized that there was so much more to it than what I had actually thought by the name, which I know a lot of people have that misconception of recreational therapy that, oh, you just play games. So learned a lot about the body and the mind and everything else. Well, what happened after I graduated, so I did my first internship in Corpus Christi, Texas, because my goal was to move to Texas one day. And that one was in physical rehab. And about 2 months in, I ran out of money and had to go back to California because it was not a paid internship. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of this. But back in California, I was like, what do I do? And they're like, you're gonna have to complete a whole new internship. And so I did my second one in Parks and Recreation, which is at the SAC TR Parks and Recreation District area. And it was working with people with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities and doing more of a community type role versus physical rehab. So completely different experiences right off the bat before I even got in the field. And then right after that, my first big boy job after I graduated was working in nursing homes. So I did skilled nursing and assisted living. And that gave me a completely new perspective of recreational therapy, because when I was starting to do some of the things I did in my physical rehab internship with the patients there, the rehab department thought that a rec therapist shouldn't be able to do that types of stuff. And they thought, well, you're the activity director, because that's what they called it. And so you're just in charge of bingo, basically. And so did some education there and found out that, because this job I actually had two assistants, found out, had my first manager type job, and found out that I really liked structure and I liked how to make the program better. So I put a lot of effort into that, and I realized how important it was for marketing for the facility if their activities of daily living, the things that they got to do as patients, was of a higher caliber than just bingo. And so we started doing that, and we helped them get to a higher star rating, which then led to another job where the administrator left and said, come do that same thing over here. So I did that with him. And then at the same time, I was engaged, and my wife had lost her job at the Christian radio station out in California, K-Love. And so after that, unemployment was 13% in California. She was looking for work everywhere. And she got two job offers. One was in Tyler, Texas, which I never heard of in my life, and a place in Florida. And we were looking at like cost of living and all the other factors. And we made the decision to move to Tyler, Texas. Well, Tyler, Texas does not know what recreational therapy is. So came out here looking for work and had to go back to being a pizza delivery driver, which was a humbling step to go, backward. They also realized that in Texas, they pay them less than a minimum wage because they expect to make the rest up in tips. So I was like, I'm making like $7 an hour. I need to provide and do stuff. And now I'm in this new state and there's no jobs. So I found the closest job that I could, which was an hour away in Longview, Texas. And so during that drive, it was at a behavioral health hospital. And since, it was recreational therapy, I thought, well, this is my way to get back in the field and start building myself up again. And during that long drive there and back every day, I would listen to podcasts. And one of the podcasts that I was listening to was called Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn. Highly recommend you check it out if you're interested in learning how to create a business. And also that if you're wanting to not make the same mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs make, he does them for you basically, and you can learn from his mistakes, which is always much more valuable because you're saving time and money, right? While I was listening to it, he mentioned this thing about evergreen content and how you can create courses online. And it wasn't recreational therapy specific he was talking about, but I was like, well, I need to get continuing education. I know that rec therapists are spread across the United States and they're all in different areas. They're also in Canada and other countries, even Singapore, apparently, Jenna. But the options to going to in-person conferences aren't always feasible. And I looked online and there was one guy doing it. I could totally help solve this problem. And so started creating a business called Rec Therapy CEUs, because I wanted it to be SEO friendly. So SEO, search engine optimization.
Yeah.
And when I created that, I got a cease and desist letter saying that he owned the term Rec Therapy CEUs, which then was freaking me out because I was brand new in business and I didn't know if, that meant that I was going to have to do a legal case or something, or I didn't know what that actually meant.
Right.
Through about a year and a half of this conversation going back and forth, and we came to an agreement, and thus changed the name to Smart CEUs Hub and charged him some money to get the name. And then we just continued growing with Smart CEUs Hub. While I was working at Longview, at Behavioral Health Hospital Longview, and starting this on the side, I found a job that was closer to home at UT Health Research Hospital, and it was in forensic psych. And I really liked forensic psych even better because you have people there for legal reasons, etc. And Smart CEUs Hub was growing, but it wasn't enough to surpass my income to be able to justify doing it full time. So I worked there for about 3.5 years while I was building this up. And about that time, I was able to quit my job as a practitioner and go full time into Smart CEUs Hub, which was a huge shock because from working a full-time job plus working the side business that I was trying to grow, and still not knowing if it was ever actually going to do anything or if it was going to grow to a significant place. And when it did, I went from doing that to working only 3 hours a week. And I thought, wow, I'm 30 years old.
Oh.
And a lot of the stuff I created was automatic courses, pre-develop them, and then get them approved through NCTRC, and then get them out there to the audience. And as that kept growing, we started hiring other instructors and that had other expertise in RT than I did. And then that grew to 26 instructors. So then now we have 26 instructors working for Smart CEUs Hub. And we have 3 other staff. One of them's a social media, and she does our in-person conference coordination. Her name is Valerie. She's awesome. Tina, who's been my virtual assistant and the Smart CEUs Hub newsletter writer and course reviewer now for years. And then Peter from Australia, who ended up coming on board through another connection, who does all of our tech stuff. And so this helped, to create jobs for these people, which then also helped free up my time so that I could do other businesses. So while I was working at the UT hospital in Tyler, I mentioned this before the podcast, but the nurses there, they had to open a lot of medications. Well, while dealing with those medications, some of the things I saw the nurses were doing were not that great. Like one had a ring with a Band-Aid on it, and she was using it to puncture the backs of the pill packaging that the patient's medication came in. And that obviously leads to germs being traded around. It leads to, cross-contamination, pills falling on the floor, all of that. And that nurse said, well, Nathan, if you could create something that would solve this problem, I'd be your beta tester. And then I got a few of the other nurses and started doing that on the side with my free time. That eventually got to a place 26 prototypes later to where the nurses loved it. They felt it was useful. And then it was like, okay, well, I'm going to go get this thing patented, and I'm going to start figuring out what I don't know about manufacturing and a whole different type of business, right? Completely different than what I'd done before. Partnered with a company that ended up, promising a lot of things and taking a large sum of money and percent ownership in that business. And then later having to break it off where they didn't give any of the money back. It was 25 grand. It was a significant amount of money. And I got stalled basically in pursuing that. After you get a big blow like that and a company does something like that, you kind of lose your motivation. After a year later, funny story, FBI called. And I got to speak to the FBI, which is not something I was expecting, but they were calling about this company called Idea Pros, which is the company that I partnered with. And they were saying that they were caught doing this with other places they partnered with. And so I had to give like this whole phone interview where they recorded it and talked about all this stuff, and then give them every communication that we had with them and all this stuff. And still don't know to this date what's going to happen to them, because you can't ask the FBI any questions. So that was an interesting experience.
Yeah. Very validating though.
Yeah, I felt like, okay, I was scammed by a legit scammer, right?
Yeah.
None of that fake scam. No,
Not the only one.
I wasn't laughing at that time. Eventually decided to move the pill puncher forward. So the innovation pipeline, they needed a success story. So they said, okay, well, you've gotten something patented that we made here. And so they had me go to city council as like demonstration, like showing them what the innovation pipeline can do for entrepreneurs. And what that did is it got interest from like the mayor and a few other people to invest in it. From there, it was pretty crazy. It's like I got 2 TV gigs to advertise it, and it was like people were reaching out, can I buy one? And I'm like, well, I've not even made it yet. I have just the prototypes. So I got my butt to work and started building that business. And finally, 5 years later, after everything started, we're actually getting it out to the market. Did pre-orders, and so people have already started buying it, which was a huge, sigh of relief to see that thing moving forward. So that's what brings me here today. This is how I got here. I know it's a long-winded story, but thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, and it's so cool to hear about your fails and successes, because I think when you're looking at entrepreneurship, that is probably kind of a reality, right? Is as you're figuring it out, you got to figure out what works, what doesn't. And so it'll be really awesome to hear about your points here, because you have a lot of experience with these businesses. So thanks for coming on. We're excited to hear more from you. So you mentioned that you have 10 steps to start your own RT business. And this is a class that you teach. Is this on Smart CEUs Hub?
The class is actually called the Rec Therapy Business Master Class, and that's only a handout for the class. That's not the class. There is actually a link on the website. Currently, I put it up because I knew this podcast would be going up. And it's an 8-week long class, do it through Zoom Live. So we talk about everything from starting your own like structure to your business, dealing to some of the mental struggles that you'll come to maybe as a business owner, to hiring employees, to permits and licensing, to insurance, billing, all the things that you might have questions about when you want to start your own RT business. And we've been doing that for 3 years now. So
cool.
So it's an 8-week
Awesome.
class, and it will be offered June 1st. And then how often does it run throughout the year? Because this is all live in person.
Yes. So I like to take a month off in between classes. So it's 8 weeks. So it's about 2 months. I take a month off, then 2 months, take a week off. And then there's an extra, a 9th week that you can pay for, which gets you the business plan review. So we'd go over your business plan and actually look for feasibility, look for things that might be missing. If you're trying to pitch to an investor, what things that they would be looking for, those types of things, so that you have a solid roadmap, which I highly advise anybody wanting to start your business to do first, is to research all of these things before you start, paying money and not really knowing where your money is actually most valuable. You save you a lot of time that way too.
So anyone listening to this podcast, if after listening to this episode with Nathan, you are further interested in learning more, you can sign up to do this masterclass with him. Today, you are going to go through that 10-step handout for rec therapy business, kind of not quite as in depth as the masterclass will be going, but just kind of give us a little overview of some of the topics that masterclass can cover and some of the things that people interested in rec therapy entrepreneurship should be thinking about as they get started.
Yes. So the very first step anyone must do in any type of business is figure out a pain point to solve. So a pain point being something that causes someone enough discomfort or something that is really important to them that you are solving to create either a service or a product to address that need. So in recreational therapy, a lot of businesses start out of serving a particular demographic. You might work with people in the community with intellectual disabilities. You might work in psych or do consulting, or there's a lot of different RT types of businesses, including up to products like adaptive equipment that people can design and patent if they wish, or do things of that nature. There was a particular person that was in Canada that created a device that let people use their walker inside the swimming pool where it wouldn't float up, and it allowed them to walk into the pool without having that issue. So it made it more accessible. So I thought that was a really cool invention. But pain point to solve is the first step. You can't do anything else till you figure out what the problem is. And it can't just be because you want to do it. It's not going to be feasible if it's just that.
And so when, like with your businesses, you found like the pill issue is very unsanitary, and so pain point to solve. Did you research more than that, or was it just like this nurse talking to you about that at that time?
I actually had to do a lot of research to get the investments to demonstrate. Well, for instance, 20% of all medication in the United States comes in blister packs. A common problem for people not with just arthritis or elderly or nursing, staff has to open those pills, but even, the everyday person who just wants to get their medication and they go fumbling around for like scissors or something. So the device actually punctures the back and allows you to punch down. So it's a pill puncher, punches it out of the package into a cup so that it can, easily not ever fall on the floor. The plastic it's made out of is antimicrobial, so it's not going to pass germs, and it is safe for psych. The thought was, these are the pain points that those particular people that I'm serving. Some of the other research was, okay, so there's 6 million nurses in the United States alone. There are 2.83 million people over the age of 65. And there's a lot of different things that you can find online through like the census to figure out like what your potential market might look like. And then what are your avenues? Another research is like, what are your avenues to advertise this and get it in front of the right people so that they actually do purchase it and they find the item? Because if they don't know about it, it can't help them, right? So figuring out what are the least expensive, because at first when you're starting a business, you're not looking to spend like $1 million. You're trying to be frugal, and the biggest impact, which is called ROI, so return on investment. You got to do research in that area too. Also figuring out what your break even would be, so your financials, figuring out what are capital expenses, so business expenses that happen up front that you're not going to have to pay for again, versus an ongoing expense that you have to do to keep the doors open every month. And then seeing what your profit margin would be like so that you personally can live off of it. Because a lot of times when you're starting a business, you're not going to be a millionaire right off the bat. It takes time and growth over a long period of time to achieve success. For most people.
That makes sense. And that's kind of is that kind of part of your step 2, like conduct market research to see if solving the pain point is financially viable? That kind of
Yes.
area.
Yes.
Okay.
How do people conduct market research? Like, what are some things that you would advise if you're trying to, I mean, I know that's probably a very vague question for such a broad topic of people starting all sorts of businesses, but what does that mean to conduct market research?
So first figure out where the people that you're trying to solve the pain point for already hang out.
Okay.
So if they are part of the YMCA, and let's say there are a bunch of your target market would be elderly people, you might have a lot of people there that are using the YMCA, which then could become a group to beta test with, a group to survey and ask questions to, including qualitative questions versus just numbers. If this problem was solved, would that be something you would even pay for? Sometimes it's not a big enough issue that somebody would actually pay money for it. And you don't want to spend your time thinking you're solving the world's problems and then realize that you spent all this time and effort on something people actually don't even really want. And you don't want to ask just your friends and family either, because they will taint their answers. A lot of times they'll be trying to preserve your feelings. So you want to have people that don't know you answer those questions. What I like to use at first when I was starting out was LinkedIn for Smart CEUs Hub. I had a business partner at the very beginning, and he was an accountant. He wasn't even a recreational therapist. And he ended up becoming the top contributor in all the LinkedIn groups because of all the questions he would ask. And so we asked recreational therapists, what do you want? What would be a solution to this problem that we're facing? And that's where we got our pricing from. That's where we got the topics at the beginning, the idea of like doing behavioral health at first, because it was such a big part of recreational therapy. And where are they part of Facebook groups? Are they on Instagram? Where the audience already hangs out? And then from there, you formulate what it would cost to reach them. And obviously I'm looking for free ways, which are the best in my opinion, and the word of mouth takes over, hopefully, eventually, which then becomes the best way, rather than spending money on like Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads when it really doesn't actually get you your audience.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially recreation therapists. If a lot of recreation therapists wanting to work with the clients that we work with, LinkedIn might not be the best way to find find the groups that you want to, but maybe talking to other businesses that are doing something similar to what you're thinking of doing, and saying, hey, what are we missing? What do they need? What can I help with? Or
also that can create partnerships. So let's say you meet somebody who already serves the clients that you're looking for. Maybe you have an overlap, but maybe it could be a symbiotic relationship where they refer people to you and you refer people to them. And then you're multiplying your marketing effort, because both parties it's a win-win deal for both. So that's what you should think about when you do business, is thinking about how to make win-wins.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just thinking like city recreation groups, like city therapeutic recreation groups. If you're a recreation therapist trying to be an entrepreneur, you can probably partner with cities. It would be a great relationship, right? Because there are things at their level that they can do, but referring clients out to a specialized program, say especially adaptive sports or social group that you have, or whatever you're thinking of doing, that's probably a really great option for people. So your step 3, write out a formal business plan. What does that look like? That seems like a big scary thing, I guess.
It is a big
like look at that, like, wow, I don't know, what is that? How many pages is that? So explain that to us.
Okay, so a business plan will consist of multiple sections, right? So don't think of the whole beast. Think about each beast in particular. So like a book, you have chapters, right? So your first area will be your business name. Like, what do you want it to be? What is your mission? What problem are you solving? Right? You would have a vision. Once your problem is solved, what will that look like? What will the result look like to that problem being solved in your community and wherever you're trying to solve it? Then you go into where your target market is. You look into, there's going to be a section called the executive summary where you sum up everything that you talked about, and it has to be only one page. So the reason why I say only one page, it could be longer. When you are trying to show an investor, this is going to be your cover page of your business plan. This is going to be what entices them to actually read further, because everything else is going to be statistics, like numbers. It's going to be looking like, okay, what's your potential time on return on investment? If you're trying to get a bank loan, what would that look like? All of this stuff that you got to think about, because unless you're funding this out of your own pocket, you got to think about that. We actually have a document that we give out during the Rec Therapy Business Masterclass, which is a template. So it has all of the sections, and then it has in the sections what questions need to be answered in that section. So you know where to start your research and know what questions to ask. And then mine usually around like 7 to 8 pages.
Well, and it sounds like if you have a template with questions, that sounds a lot more doable to me. So guys, take his class.
So it feels like to me a huge hurdle to starting any sort of business is making sure that it is legally sound and following all different tax laws. Like, you don't want to have a situation where, someone is
calling the FBI on you.
Yeah, calling the FBI on your business. So can you just walk us through I know this is step 4 of your process, like how do you navigate the legal tax structure for owning your own business?
Okay, so first of all, I like to separate the idea of tax and legal. They're not the same in the sense of what you're doing for your business. However, there is some overlap of why you make certain choices in your legal structure or why you make choices for taxes. So to start out, I like to explain what the different classifications of your business could be. You could have a sole proprietorship, which means that it's just you. Now, a sole proprietorship, by default, you could start a business tomorrow and go out and use your first and last name as your business name. And that could be a sole proprietorship. If you want to actually use a name, like let's say you come up with a creative name, you'd have to get a DBA, which we'll be talking about in step 5, which is a doing business as. And you get that through your county clerk. So whatever county you live in, look for your county clerk's office, go to the office and fill out, it's 2 pages, typically a front and a back. And it links your social security number with that business name so that when it comes to taxes and everything else, it can be tracked, right? And that's if you want to be creative. A sole proprietorship has no legal advantage to you. It is the cheapest way to start a business. For a DBA, you're looking at $27. You pay that once and it's good for 10 years. So you have to just renew it every 10 years. So that's the cheapest possible way to get into business. Then you have a general partnership, which I will start off by advising no one ever do. The reason is it's like the sole proprietorship. However, you have multiple people, right? So it could be 2 or more people. And when taxes come around at the end of the year, both of your social security numbers are tied to that business name. So let's say person A that you work with, because they're your best friend, you got in business together, you had this great idea, you're going to do this thing. And at the end of the year, they don't pay their portion of the taxes. That means now you're going to be paying your portion and their portion. Otherwise, you're both in trouble. Because it provides 0 legal protection for you, this type of partnership is not the way to go. There is an LLC, which could be a partnership, which then protects you both because you're creating an entity now. You're not just being a person or 2 people that are paired together with a social security number going towards a business name. you are now a legal entity, which then gets filed with your Secretary of State. So whatever state you live in, if you live in the US, you go to your Secretary of State's website, or you can do this through like a thing like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer or these other sites where you can actually form your LLC. And the LLC is limited liability company. So by the name, it limits your liability. You won't actually, like, let's say your business gets sued. You started this business, you were doing really good, your intentions were great. Somebody slips and falls, hurts themselves, and then sues your company. The worst that can happen in that case is that the company goes under. You personally, your money, your personal, like your house, your assets, all that other stuff are now protected because this entity is separate from you. So LLC protects you, adds a veil of protection.
And this is protection that you wouldn't have if you did sole proprietor, correct?
You would not. You have no protection. You are 100% liable for all potential problems as a sole proprietor.
Okay, that makes sense.
And
general
taxes.
partnership, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. A regular LLC also has no tax advantages. So I want to point that out. By default, just like your sole proprietorship, any money that you make, it goes directly to you, right? So it flows through the business to you, and it actually does nothing. It's just passed through taxes. So you have a 15% standard tax as a self-employed individual in the US. Then you have another tax on top of that, which typically, if you have a W-2, let's say you're working for somebody else, you're paying half of your taxes while your business is paying, the business you work for is paying the other half. So you're paying about 15% of your salary to Social Security, to all these things that, go on your taxes. By default, none of that changes. You're paying about 30% of the money you make to the government if you just have a straight LLC. So keep that number in mind when you determine if you wanted to change that. Now, there are tax elections for LLCs. You can actually get an S Corp status or C Corp status for your LLC for taxation purposes. And we'll talk about what S Corp and C Corp stand for. What that does is it changes the type of income and how the government sees your income. So an S Corp, the S stands for shareholder. It's owned by shareholders. And an LLC being taxed as an S Corp, you get all the advantages of being a shareholder for the LLC. However, you don't have the legal part of the requirement of an S Corp, which means you have to have a board of directors. You have to have all these other requirements, quarterly minutes that are being recorded and that are submitted. And so doing a straight S Corp is not really advantageous, in my opinion, when you can just do the same thing through an LLC and get this tax advantage and the protection. So I would assume why LLCs are the most popular business type in America. So then C Corps are corporate owned. So they're going to have a board of directors as well. They're going to have shareholders as well. But that corporation is taxed versus the corporate level, whatever money's left over in that company at the end of the year. Let's say you had $100,000 in that company. It's going to get taxed at that rate. And then from the money that you also individually made from that company, so you paid yourself a salary or whatever else, right? You're also getting taxed again. So you get double taxed. So a C Corp doesn't have any, advantages unless, this is where it gets more complicated, if you wanted to have one company owning another company or a bunch of other companies, where then like your C Corp's at the top, and you have an HR department that you own as well. You have a cleaning company that comes and cleans your facility, which is a company you own. You have all this stuff, right? And they're all sending invoices to your C Corp, which has all the money come in. And at the end of the year, basically all the money in the C Corp's been paid out to all these entities that you also own, which then means that the tax liability from the corporate is based off of a lower number, and your tax bracket's going to be lower because each of these companies, their threshold is below the tax bracket, the next trade-off. So they actually save money by doing that. So when your company grows to a certain place or size, it would make sense to do that. Or if you have multiple companies. But for the regular everyday person, entrepreneur, an LLC, and then electing for it to be an S Corp, full 2-page thing you got to fill out with the IRS is the simplest, most easy solution.
I think that I have heard most about, like what you said, the LLC is what I've heard most about when like looking at entrepreneur stuff. So with your smart CEUs, was it LLC with S Corp tax benefits? Is that what you did?
So at the very beginning, I did a general partnership with that guy, the accountant, and he moved away and then had more kids and couldn't do anything in the business. Yet I was still having to pay him 50% of the profit. So we broke that off when that happened, and it was really hard. But he was also feeling the same thing, so it ended on a good note. It didn't end on a bad note. Then I decided to do an LLC for Rec Therapy CEUs when it was called Rec Therapy CEUs, and then had to do another name change when it became Smart CEUs Hub. And it wasn't until like 4 years ago. So Smart CEUs Hub is 8.5 years old. 4 years ago that I elected for it to have an S Corp status, because first I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't learn that until I talked to accountants about how to save money, because Smart CEUs Hub kept growing and then my tax burden kept growing. And so I got to figure out how to keep more of my money. And it was like a simple solution, which if I would have known it at the beginning, I would have done.
It's helpful to know the different types of, would you say these are different types of businesses or just different ways that you're registering your business?
These are different tax and legal structures. These aren't
Okay.
what you're actually providing or what you're doing.
Sure. So it's helpful to know those. I feel like starting out, you're maybe going to do less, but then as you get bigger, it's helpful to know that you can switch into different kinds of structures.
Yeah, was it hard to switch? What was that like? Did you have to like create a whole new business, or was it like, hey, I just need to like change what this is? Like, how did that work?
So when I had the general partnership, we had to dissolve the general partnership. So there's like a contract that was written out with both me and my partner saying we dissolved this relationship, which then meant I had to form a new LLC. And the LLC, like in Texas, so depending on what state you live in, your LLC will cost different amount. So it's not going to be the same here as it is where you're at. For instance, in Texas, I pay about $150 a year for my LLC. It's pretty reasonable. However, Smart CEUs Hub was actually formed in Nevada, and there's a reason why we did that, for protection for taxes in particular. There are certain states that are more favorable to businesses and taxes. Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware, and I forget the other one. Texas is also pretty good. But Nevada was particularly attractive because they have a $4 million cap before you actually have to report your taxes to their state. And if your business doesn't make $4 million in a year, which most businesses are not, then you aren't having to pay state tax there, which is great. You have to have I don't want to spend more money than I have to. And the reason why they have that cap so high is because of the casinos, and they make tons of money. So for the average person that starts their business there, a lot of businesses are formed there, yet they don't actually have a physical location. They just have a registered agent who gets your legal papers and sends them to you.
Cool. Okay. And you guys are still an LLC, right? You haven't become a C Corp.
An LLC with a S Corp designation for taxes.
Okay, cool.
I saw nonprofits on there too.
Yeah, so
people might be interested in that.
Yeah, I think a lot of rec therapists work in nonprofits or are interested in starting a nonprofit. So you said nonprofits are corporations who file with IRS tax exempt. So what is that? Can they be an LLC, or does that mean they automatically have to be an S Corp or a C Corp?
Okay, so they can be an LLC, an S Corp, or a C Corp when they start out. Then they have to file, I don't have the form name in my head, but it's the IRS form that allows you to apply for to be tax exempt and to be a nonprofit. Now, in that document, it's a really long document, and there's an approval process, usually about like 6 months long. And in that case, right, you have to show that your nonprofit fits one of three categories. One is that it provides a public need, right? It serves a population in your area. It's a church or educational facility, and those are the three. So if it doesn't do those three, you'll get denied. But if it does those three, and a lot of times RTs can qualify because the clients we serve, right, they would qualify under starting a nonprofit, let's say serving people with developmental disabilities in the community, or class of people that doesn't get served, and that saves you tons of money. Does not mean you're not going to get a profit though. Trivia question for you both. What is the largest US based nonprofit, and how much money do you think that they made?
Is it the NFL?
Yes, the NFL. You are correct. You were the first person to get that right off the top. In 2015, they were forced to change to a for-profit status, though.
Yeah.
But NFL didn't own the teams. They don't own the teams. They don't pay the players, right? Those are paid by the teams themselves. They are just the league. They provide a league, and somehow they were able to convince the government that they were helping inner city kids, and that was the way that they qualified as a nonprofit. Yeah.
Holes within the system to
Yeah.
Yes.
benefit yourself. Not that rec therapists listening to this podcast are trying to
Use them. Yes. Don't use
use
them.
the system.
Don't abuse, but find what works for you, like find if this will work better for you to be a nonprofit than something else, then it's a good, be business savvy, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Okay.
we figured out what our legal tax structure is, and we registered our business, all that good stuff. I feel like 6 and 7 you can probably talk about together. Just walk us through those steps to get license and permits and also insurance, all those important things that you need to have to be able to legally and also operate your business without any sort of liability or mitigate the liability to yourself.
Yes.
Risk management.
Okay. So depending on your state and depending on what type of business that you create, you will have possible licenses or permits that are required. So let's say you have a physical location, and that physical location requires that you are ADA accessible, requires that you have general liability insurance, so you're protected against slips and falls, someone gets hurt. You may be providing some sort of medical intervention if it's viewed that way, right? In that case, you would need malpractice insurance. These are things that you can get off of the HSPO website, which is the Health Services Provider something organization, and basically allows you to get these types of things. Also, you can get a national provider number, which would allow you to be put in the database to be able to bill for like Medicaid waivers. You'd mentioned you worked in Texas as a subcontractor.
Yes. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I had the HPSO insurance, but I was a subcontractor. So my boss owned an LLC and I was just working through her, but I had the insurance, personal liability insurance, so that if anything happened with my clients, that I would not be liable for that money that they would need for whatever.
Yeah. And yes, it costs money, but it's not a ton, right?
No, it wasn't too bad. I don't remember how much it cost, but maybe like $50 a year. It seemed reasonable to me at the time.
Yeah. And to save yourself from potential hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Totally worth it. Yeah. So definitely at least get general liability insurance. You can go to like pretty much any, type in Google corporate liability insurance or general liability insurance, and you're going to get a million ads in different companies. Some of them are the same ones that provide homeowners insurance or auto insurance. So you can find many options and just compare rates.
So there are insurance companies, like just general insurance companies that you can recommend to get malpractice or general liability insurance, right? Like this isn't, you have to find.
Yeah, general liability, you're going to have most of them like Allstate or Geico. Those ones would have things like that. Interesting billing thing that I didn't mention earlier. So Michigan, there's a company out there called Strive Recreational Therapy Services. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I think I have.
They're one of the largest rec therapy businesses in the US. I think it's like 30 employees, all rec therapists. For them, they found a creative way to bill. They actually were able to bill auto insurance. So they had this thing called no fault auto insurance that allowed somebody who got in an accident to pick a provider, and you could actually have services pitched to you or marketed to you if you were in a car accident. And so they would get reimbursed through their car insurance. So kind of a creative way people were thinking outside the box.
That is really cool. And another like kind of pain point, right? Like people trying to recover from injury. That's really cool. Good job, guys. So step 8, decide where to operate your business. If your business needs a building, rent, purchase a building. Do you have a building for any of your businesses, Nathan?
So I actually, as you can tell, this is my house. This is my office. This is where I actually do everything. Or coffee shops, or like there was this co-working spot that was downtown that I used to go to. But physical buildings, I do not.
In my experience, I obviously haven't been a TR entrepreneur, but working for a TR entrepreneur as part of her rec therapy contracting business in Texas, she had an actual office. And so sometimes, depending on the activities I was doing with my clients, we would actually go to her office and do activities there, like art projects or just things. Like most of the time we were out in the community doing stuff at gyms and local parks, but every once in a while we would do sessions in the office. So it probably just depends on what your business is and what the needs are.
Is there anything specific with this step that you want to point out to people, or?
People are probably hearing the knowledge is one thing, but sometimes it takes, and for me at least, community efforts. So there are groups called business mastermind groups, hopefully in your area. Usually towns have them, where it's people that are entrepreneurs of all different types. They're not just, in your market, but that's a great way to network, to create those relationships. They understand what an entrepreneur is like. It's a different experience, right? They will be able to talk about their things that went well, things that didn't go well, to learn from people who have been there, done that, which is so much more valuable than trying to just do everything on your own and try to do all the guesswork. I would have saved so much time if I could go back and have those resources right at the beginning. So if you need resources, we have another website called the Rec Therapy Directory, which is brand new, and it will have all things rec therapy. So you'll have interventions library, jobs, a shop, resources, schools and universities, study guides for students. It's up there currently. So if you go to rectherapydirectory.com, you can do that. Hopefully you'll be able to connect with entrepreneurs on the TR Entrepreneur Connection Facebook group, which is another thing. Other entrepreneurs that have been there and done that. It's a free resource. It doesn't cost you anything. And you get to ask all those questions and have that jump start. Totally super valuable.
Yeah, that sounds really great. We would love that. And if you're looking for these resources, we will have them on our website. You don't have to stop listening to write these down. We'll have them at realtalkrecreationtherapy.com, and we'll link to all of the things that Nathan is talking about. So worry not. We will have them.
We'll also put a little glossary for all the business terms that we threw around today, just in case anyone's wondering what beta testing means. We'll have it all listed there as we talk about it so that people can understand the terms if they're a little confused.
Yeah,
you learn a new language when you start a business.
Yeah, it's very true. So
Right.
Step 9, create a website, social media pages. And there are lots of resources to do that now. We use WordPress. What did you use, Nathan, for Smart CEUs?
It's WordPress. WordPress is by far the most advantageous for SEO for the entrepreneur that's starting out. You're not going to be spending a monthly amount and committing to a monthly amount like on Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, all those ones. But the advantage of those is they have a template, so you don't have to know anything tech to be able to operate. My friend Peter Haynes, who is the tech guy for us, he builds RT websites. So if you need RT websites, he's got that whole thing on there. Website that is done on WordPress, that is done well with like SEO and like everything else that you're needing, is going to cost about $1,500 to $2,000. That's a decent website. I know that's a sticker shock for some people, but if you could start a business for a lot cheaper or have a website like on Squarespace and stuff, but you're going to be paying longer in the long run, and you don't own the content. And once you stop paying them, your website goes down. When you own your WordPress website, it is yours. And you have to pay for hosting still. You have to pay for these fees like your domain every year, but depending on what you do for that, you could be paying pennies on the dollar compared to what you'd be spending in the long run on Squarespace, Wix, and all that. So WordPress is the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's worked out for us so far. And you guys can probably if you're listening to this, you probably know that we're not super techie over here. We're figuring it out as we go. But it took a lot of time because I don't know the tech stuff, but I've been able to figure out the basics. But if you're looking for like SEO help, which is how people can find your website, who was your friend, Nathan, that works?
Peter Haynes. He owns a company called Wild Lion Web.
Yeah. We'll link to that because I'm sure he will have much better. I'm sure like that would be really helpful if you actually want to be seen very quickly like that. I guess I'm just saying from our year of experience doing this is, I'm with you on this, that would not be a bad thing to pay for. you make up for it, right? Like in how much people can find you. Carol and I, this isn't really a business, right? This is kind of a hobby. We're sharing this with everyone. We're not trying to make money on this, but if you were, making sure that you're able to be found, making sure like all of those things are more complicated than it might sound when you're first making it, I guess.
Yeah. And some tips on that, so you can jumpstart, is getting your business on Google My Business. Since Google is the #1 search engine people find things on, going on Google My Business allows you to upload, so local business will actually, be directed to you as the first option. Obviously, people don't scroll past probably even half the first page before they find what they're looking for. So if you're not on the first page of Google and people are looking for that particular service or thing that you do, then your SEO needs to be improved. And there's lots of different ways to do that, which we can go over in that masterclass. There's so many things, so many tricks, but you learn them over time.
Do you teach the master class, or do you have like other people that you're working with teach this? Do you all work together to do it?
It's going to be me. Peter comes in and does all the tech talk because that's his specialty. He does that for free, actually, in exchange for the potential of getting clients as rec therapists, right? Because he feels like I'm a good outlet to get rec therapists. So,
For sure,
but it's a good relationship. He's also moving to the US. So if you want to meet him, come to Tyler, Texas. That's where he's moving.
Well, we're so much closer in Australia right now. Stop in Singapore first. Just kidding.
Yeah, stop in Singapore.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so step 10, begin marketing your business. So we created website, social media pages. In my mind, that's kind of marketing, but obviously there's a lot more to it. So what kind of goes into this last step? Yes.
So the website and the social media page is where you're directing people with your marketing, right? It also can be a form of marketing. But just because you have a website, there are millions of websites out there. The way that you get that website knowledge out there, like it exists, are things like, I'll give you another trick besides Google My Business. Getting on Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a high authority score. And if you are, because it's all user generated content, you can go in and edit pages with a backlink to your website from Wikipedia, and it boosts your SEO. You can, like, if you're doing something local, you might, get a billboard. I don't know if that's something you'd be cost effective, but for Pill Puncher, what I'm going to be doing is actually doing the scenes before a movie, like how they have advertising before movies, and seeing I have a captive audience right there. And there's a local movie theater here, and I want this thing to be local at first and then grow, so I don't have to fight China with knockoffs. So having local advertising in my case is really important. So I'm also partnered with the gym I go to. So we have like a banner out at the gym, and there's other things that I do through like relationships with the mayor and like the other people that are on board through getting that information out there. Joining the Chamber of Commerce wherever you live is a great way because your business gets put in their directory, also gives you backlinks. Guest speaking on somebody's podcast or blog like we're doing today, you'll get backlinks, which then will also hopefully help SEO and all that, and introduce people to what you're providing. And the key to that is also not just talking about yourself, it's giving advice so that they find value, therefore they want to use you, versus if you just talk about yourself, they'll just tune you out. Yeah, the little things that you can do to help market your business. But once you've created your social media and your website, you could pay for ads if you wanted to. You could share in Facebook groups, which is a great way to reach rec therapists, those types of things.
Yeah, that's really cool. And those are amazing tips, like just that you just shared just now. So I'm sure that going to your masterclass is really beneficial if you guys are wondering what to do that. And if you are listening and you have a business and you want us to promote you, we would love to connect more recreation therapists together. So send us a message on our website, and we'd love to host more people on our podcast. So
interview you about your business.
We can be those people for you. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we covered the 10 steps for starting your own rec therapy business, which is just a brief overview of a lot of the information that you'll cover more in depth in your masterclass. We just had a few other questions to go through. You may have answered some of them, but I thought we would just kind of knock them out as we go. So our first question which we kind of talked about a little bit with that rec therapy business in Michigan that uses auto insurance to be able to bill for rec therapy. I feel when I think about rec therapy businesses, my mind goes immediately to private practice, but how you actually get paid seems kind of challenging. Sometimes I wonder if people are willing to pay out of pocket for rec therapy services, or do you have any advice for finding ways to get paid as a rec therapist in private practice?
So private practice being one option, right? You have either insurance or you have private pay. Now, the way we talked about it, because a lot of states don't have insurance that you can bill, for private pay is offering free assessments, getting them in the door, trying somebody to see what kind of services so that you can actually earn the right to tell them what kind of service you can provide them. Also hosting events. An event in your community would get people to show up and pay maybe to be part of it. But getting the package deals is much easier than charging per hour. So, for instance, the guy who taught the class with me, he owned a private practice, and he would do it in 1 month or 3 months or 6 month increments. And there would be a certain amount of visits that would be included in that package. It would also include assessment. It would include all this other stuff. So they would include all these things in it. Now, to convince the person that they need your services is a whole nother topic, right? There is sales language and marketing language that you can learn. There are different books that talk about this subject. You can kind of subscribe to different ideas. Well, the guy who taught the class with me, he did consulting for rec therapy also. And he would go to like a nursing home, and he had a tactic where he would talk to the receptionist, act like he was lost and that he was trying to find the executive director or whoever was in charge, because you want to talk to the C-level people that make decisions. And he would get this meeting with that person that he would comment on something like maybe that they were wearing or something in their office. Like maybe he said he saw a fishing trophy or picture on the wall, and who was talking about, so like get talking on a unrelated subject to build rapport so that people actually they like you first. They got to like you before they use you, right? And then from there you can talk about, so this is what we do to solve this problem. What are your problems? What is your pain point? But you don't say, what is something you wish you could be able to do? What if we set up a plan to achieve that goal? So let's say maybe you're talking to the family of the client that you're wanting to serve, because maybe they have a caregiver, or in that case, their pain point might be that I want them to get out there and do more things. I want them to be part of a sport, or I want them to whatever the thing is. In that case, what you're doing is you're tailoring your services to provide the solution to that problem. Using the RT scope of practice, you can kind of tailor a lot of different solutions to what we can do. Mental health could be certain things with mental health. Like we want to get you to where you're not on drugs anymore. We want to help you to find a healthy coping outlet. We want to be able to get you involved with social structure so that you can have the support that you need to be able to do these changes, so you're not all alone. And in these cases, what you're doing, you're speaking to their problem, and if they're willing to pay for a solution to their problem, they're willing to pay you because you have told them that you could solve that problem for them. So that would be like how you approach people, and having a good elevator pitch that isn't overly complicated, but it also just talks about what you do as a rec therapist. So we provide services that use recreation and leisure as tools to help a client achieve whatever their goal is. And so once you found out what their problem is, we would provide a plan to help you achieve that goal.
That's really cool. And I feel like you can't underestimate networking once you get started, because as soon as you start getting people, they're going to tell their friends, and then they're going to tell their friends, and people will know people that have similar problems or similar goals that they have. And so when I was in school, just like talking to my mom about the stuff I was learning, and then she was like, oh, this neighbor wants you to do this practice RT test on them. And then all of a sudden I was all over the neighborhood, just as a student, just for fun, just doing practice assessments and being like, oh, okay, well, based on this, maybe you should go do this. Maybe that would be cool. Just kind of talking to them about what, based on like the assessments we were doing, what I could see recreation doing for them. So
Yeah.
that was just as a student and I wasn't doing a business. It was just getting practice doing assessments and finding those things. So networking after that. So I think probably it's a little tricky to get started. And then once you get going, maybe it gets better, hopefully.
Sounds like it would be really intimidating to do it first, but once you did it successfully, then it would get a lot easier over time.
So a key point is after you do get those first people, whoever those first people are, you get a testimonial from them so that you can show social proof that what you did was actually valuable.
Yeah.
Advertise on your website, talk about it, and maybe get a video or something. Maybe offer to do the first service for free so you can get that testimonial, just to give you that social proof. When I started Smart CEUs Hub, nobody knew who I was. They like, why should I take a course? I had imposter syndrome, like hardcore. And it wasn't until we had 25 beta testers, or we gave it to them for free and had them go through the process with NCTRC to see if they would count, etc., and figure out like the questions and get reviews from them, that other people started taking courses from us. And now we have 5,000 rec therapists using it every year. So what started out is I didn't have the door, now I got a big door.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. So don't give up. Can do it. Okay, yeah. So initially we go to private practice, but is like what other kinds of businesses so we've talked about some, right? Other businesses that RTs can run, right? Like online businesses where you're providing CEUs or creating adaptive equipment for people to be able to use.
Some people that have taken the class wanted to open up animal assisted training to get service animals out there. Other RTs talked about equine therapy, being able to open up that. Or there's rec therapy type businesses that were like related to rec therapy that also count for CEUs. So one of our partners is Chair One Fitness. So they created a whole workout routine for people who use wheelchairs. And so in their case, they created that type of business where it's all online, but it's classes or in person too. There are nonprofits that are started specifically for outdoor rec. This one lady, Diana Prom, she started a business where she takes women who have been abused on wilderness hikes with her and like other women that have done that so that they can have that outlet, and to veteran businesses, right, where you're helping maybe a veteran enjoy archery or whatever else, those types of things. So there's a lot of different ways that you can take what we do and apply it to a business, and it really is your imagination plus what your skills are. Hopefully that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think just giving people ideas is great.
Yeah, I think we just want our listeners to understand that just because you're a recreational therapist wanting to start entrepreneurship, you're not only limited to private practice. Really, the sky's kind of the limit if you can find a problem to solve using the skills you already have.
Okay, so if you are listening and you want to hear more from Nathan about how to start your own business, tell me what it's called again, Nathan. I'm sorry. I don't want to say
the Rec Therapy Business Masterclass.
Or
you can get my book as well.
Okay.
The Entrepreneur Rec Therapist.
If you want to take the Rec Therapy Business Masterclass, the next class coming up after this podcast comes out will be in September. So, and you said it's Thursdays in September, right?
Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time, and it'll most likely be the first Thursday of that month.
And how much is the class?
Depending on what level you sign up for. So it's an 8-week-long class. The standard registration, which includes contracts, templates, all that stuff, the class itself, etc., is $347. Then you can get the one where you have a review of your business plan, which is for an extra $50. It'd be on a 9th week, and that would help figure out what things are missing and what things you should be cognizant of moving forward. And then there's the deluxe plan, which actually includes 2 private sessions. And in that case, it would be $447. That's 2 private one-on-one 1-hour sessions with me talking about your business and your business specifically to figure out what needs to happen to make it grow or start or whatever the problem is.
Very cool. So if as they're taking this class, people are like, oh, I actually do want those 2 classes. Can they sign up for them as they're taking the class, or best to sign up before? Okay.
And how do you sign up for that class?
So on the website right now on smartceushub.com, in the menu, I actually added it to the navigation bar. It used to be that we'd only advertise it through the TR Entrepreneur Connection Facebook group, and it would only be through a direct link, but now I'm opening it up to a more broader audience.
Very cool. All right. So if any of our listeners listening to this podcast have further questions, want to get in contact with you, is there a way that they can reach you, or any sort of contact information you want to share with us?
So there's a few different ways. Pretty much any email that comes through Smart CEUs Hub, through the website, etc., goes to me or my virtual assistant. If you email me directly, it's Nathan, Nathan, at smartceushub.com. Call the phone number for the office line, which Tina would answer. Tina would answer this. It's 903-508-0028. Yes, and she would be the one who would answer that. You can contact me that way. Through Pill Punch, or you can contact me. So like, there's a million ways to contact me.
Awesome. And for our listeners, all that contact information will be in the show notes. So if you do decide that you want to reach out to Nathan, you'll be able to find that on our website.
And we wanted to let listeners know that Nathan and the folks at Smart CEU Hub have been gracious enough to offer the listeners of this podcast a 10% discount on products from their site. So you can go use the promo code RealTalkRT. We'll put this in the show notes. And this discount code can be used on products, including the 1-year unlimited CEUs membership. So make sure you go to Smart CEUs Hub and check out all of these resources and see what you need, what works for you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me.
It was such good information. Thank you so much. It was really cool to hear your experiences and to share it with everyone. And so I'm really excited to get this out to everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you again to Nathan for sharing all of his experience and expertise with us. And we hope you join us for our next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Real Talk Recreation Therapy. If you're looking for some of the information that we talked about today, you can find it on our show notes at www.realtalkrecreationtherapy.com. And if you enjoyed this episode and some of the other episodes we put out, we would love to have you like, follow, subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Thank you so much for your support, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode. Bye!